The topic today is how to be a bad client. And looking back on it, we started to make a list of what are the client mindsets that really set them up for failure that we've observed.
The painful part of this mindset is when they get so focused on a particular topic that they're unwilling to solve some of these other deeper issues in their business, and they're just bouncing from service provider to service provider trying to fix this one thing. But that one thing isn't really the problem.
Basically just the front end sales channel. He developed a strategy because in his own business he wasn't profitable with the strategy.
It's clearly working wonders for our clients, and it's crazy to me how many agencies don't know about this at all.
All right, welcome back to another episode of The E-Commerce Leader. I'm here with my co-host and business partner, Kyle Hamer. Man, how's it going?
It's going good, going good. Excited to be on and record another episode. And, it's always fun.
Well, we've got a good topic today. This one's a little different than our usual topics. We took a little bit of a harsher angle, you might say, or a different approach. Hopefully it's not harsh, but it's just a different approach to the conversation. And the topic today is how to be a bad client. And the truth of it is we've worked together since 2017, working with coaching clients, predominantly on Shopify store issues, but also sometimes on Amazon. And we've had a good number of clients over the years. Now, the cool part is we still have some clients we started with a long time ago now, and have had relationships that we've, grown together with the businesses over the years. And it's really cool to have clients that have gone back, almost to our beginning. But every client we end a relationship with, I know you shouldn't, but I always just kind of take it personally, and it always affects me. I'm always bummed out, and I always just sort of mourn the loss of the potential of the relationship and of the potential of their business even. And it always hits me hard when we, have a client who we stop working with. On a few occasions, we've ended the relationship with clients, but obviously clients end relationships with us as well. And looking back on it, we started to make a list of what are the client mindsets that really set them up for failure that we've observed as outside, kind of points of view. And I thought that would be an interesting conversation today. Things that clients do mentally and in their approach to the exercise of e-commerce that limits their potential, limits their ability to scale. And that's the origin idea for this conversation. So Kyle, what are your thoughts on this idea of talking about how to be a bad client?
Yeah, I mean, the hope is that if we identify something that resonates with you and you're like, oh, I can identify with that, then you can make some adjustments to behavior, and whoever you are working with, it doesn't necessarily have to be us, but whatever service provider that you're using, hopefully this will allow you to maximize that relationship and really get the most out of what you're doing together. So, I mean, and it's important because we kind of need to reflect occasionally on how we manage not only our internal teams, but also our external partners. And that's at the crux of what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, totally right. Can you hear me now? Sorry, my mic cut out for a minute.
Yep,
you got me?
I can hear you. Yeah, you're loud.
Okay, great. Yeah. So we wanted to talk about this list. We've got 11 ways in which a client mindset can, limit them from being successful. And so we're going to go through the list. And these are in particular order, but they just kind of flowed as we started talking about this topic. And so let's jump into it. So the first mindset that limits the success of a client is what I refer to as a vampire mindset. It sounds spooky, but we don't have any clients that are actual vampires or former clients that are actual vampires. But we do have, on occasion, a client will come in and they come into the coaching program with a preconceived idea about what they need to learn or want to learn. And as soon as they extract that knowledge from our brains, then you can kind of tell they're done with the relationship. It's kind of like they come in, they have some specific issues that they feel like need to be resolved, and then see you later, bye. Now, that might be completely and totally awesome for what they wanted to learn, wanted to achieve, but we set up our coaching program in 6 months. So, in our mind, we're trying to work with people for the long term on a long set of topics that in totality make a huge impact on their e-commerce outcomes. And when it comes in just with a short-term goal of saying, I want to just learn these 3 or 4 things, once I've got them, I'm out, sort of a bummer. And I think it really, really limits their ability to scale up broadly, because as Donald Rumsfeld once said, you don't know what you don't know. And that can really, really hurt as you try to scale up your e-commerce. What are your thoughts on the vampire mindset?
Yeah, well, it sucks. No, I'm just kidding. That's bad vampire joke. But the reality is that people come in for it and they are looking to solve a specific issue in their mind. But the reality is that may not be the core fundamental issue that needs to be resolved. And so it'll kind of connect back to another topic we'll hit here on this list, but it really limits, like you said, their ability to grow, because they have a very parochial view of what the issue is. Now, they might be right. Now, it might just be a very narrow topic that they need to solve. And, if we agree on that and we think that's true, we help them solve that, great, and they're ready to move on. No issues at all. The painful part of this mindset is when they get so focused on a particular topic that they're unwilling to solve some of these other deeper issues in their business, and they're just bouncing from service provider to service provider trying to fix this one thing. But that one thing isn't really the problem. And so they're just looking to extract it and be gone, but they still have the same underlying fundamental challenges.
Yeah, totally right. And you can kind of get a vibe for it. You can be like, oh, they've worked with a lot of other people in the past. And, in a way, when you hear that, you're like, okay, so they're just jumping from one, person to the next. And so I always wonder in that situation, if they worked with a lot of people in the past and they have this issue they're trying to solve for, either they're not implementing what they're learning, or they're like, they're not getting an answer that they wanted. And it's like they're in this desperate search for maybe knowledge, but the practical, tactical implementation stuff isn't maybe happening. So that's the first mindset we run into, that when we see it's sort of like, oh, bummer, man. This is that mindset. and we're along for the ride in that regard. We're a part of the story. Okay, number two, unrealistic expectations. Now, this is one that's interesting because I think it's incredibly valuable to have big goals and big expectations. But a lot of times what people will do is they'll have a fixed number in their mind that's a revenue expectation. I want to get to $1 million in sales. It's so commonly stated, like such a common goal. And I heard Alex Hormozi teach on this recently, and he said, that's not the way to structure your goals. The way to structure your goals is to have an activity-focused goal. So you say to yourself, I'm going to execute my newsletter every day, 365 days in a row. Or I'm going to reach out to 20 prospects every day for the next 6 months. Those are the types of goals that are super helpful, and the realistic expectations around those are totally in your control.
Yep.
Unrealistic expectations, sometimes that are out of your control, can be frustrating to encounter. And the truth of it is, sometimes people have unrealistic expectations and they don't even know the consequence of the impact of having that be their goal. And for just a simple example, if you have a top line sales goal that's super aggressive, but you don't have clarity on your net profit or on your business fundamentals, then that could be a good thing, but it could be a bad thing. Right. And so sometimes unrealistic expectations or unrealistic goals can be a real frustration, especially when they are time bound. Like, well, guys, we have 3 weeks to start making $100,000, a month, or whatever it might be, to get to $50,000 a month. And that's always a recipe for frustration. Not that we haven't had clients that have Zoomed, but there's sometimes many things that have to happen before the zoom, can occur. And so,
Right.
What's your thought on this one?
It's just super important that you work towards goals that are both achievable and realistic, because like you mentioned, they might have really big goals. Say they want to reach 100, 200, 300,000 a month in revenue, and that's what they're aiming for. But rapid growth that's uncontrolled is also the definition of cancer, and it'll kill you. It'll kill your business, right? So you want to have growth that's sustainable and built on a foundation that will actually survive that growth. Now, there will always be pains associated with it, but everyone wants like this big top line revenue or goal in mind, but the foundational elements of it don't exist yet. And so there's this disconnect between what their goals are and what their reality is, and nobody can bridge that gap. No service provider, no agency, no silver bullet, like, oh, I'm just going to try this one thing and this is going to take me to where I need to go, because the foundations aren't properly established yet and you haven't built into it.
Yeah, totally. Completely agree. Okay, so the number 3 idea here is all talk, no implementation. So our conversations can be wonderful and we can talk a lot about any specific tactic or strategy, but then if the implementation doesn't occur to actually put into practice and put into production those new ideas or tactics, methodologies, then it's just a conversation. It's just educational and not practical. And so, that can be a frustrating mindset. And there's a bunch related to that, overwhelm can kick in frequently. And the truth of it is, a lot of our done-for-you services work grew out of this situation where we would talk about a technique or strategy, a tactic, and the client would just say, I don't know how to do that, or I don't have time to do that. Can you guys just do that for me? And that's how our done-for-you services work originally came about. And we're thrilled to be able to do a lot of tactical, practical activities for a growing list of awesome clients. And so this one's sort of a pros and cons situation. It's a bummer when people don't have time to implement, but at the same time, it's kind of helpful for us as a business because we can step in and be of service in that regard and help them get things accomplished.
Definitely. Yeah, this really comes down to when we're doing coaching work, right? When we're walking people through stuff, helping them organize as much as possible where they need to spend their time and energy focusing in on. And when you're an entrepreneur, especially when you're early on in your startup, you wear a lot of hats. And it's easy to get sidetracked and overwhelmed. But what I would tell and encourage people is, like, if you're still a solo shop and it's still you or maybe a business partner, you have to dedicate very focused time, particularly to marketing and branding and the things that you're going to use to grow that business, instead of getting pulled away to do other things in your business that require it. And eventually you're able to, like you said, get over the overwhelming amount of things you need to do by using service providers, hiring people, bringing them on board. But there is a lot that can happen in that. And so prioritizing the implementation of what's important really becomes an important thing, and then just be able to execute it. So there's a lot of ideas, like I want to do this idea, but then nothing gets done. That can happen quite a bit.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so the next one, fourth one on the list, is a defensive mindset or a non-coachable mindset, sometimes argumentative. And this is an interesting one, It's interesting to work with people who have been in business for a while, and as a coach, you come into it new with a fresh set of eyes and you're learning about their business. And it's interesting, sometimes, for example, I have a client who, when we ask about, let's say, email marketing or Facebook ads or like any specific thing, and the walls go up, it's like the force field goes up. It's like, no, I don't want to talk about that with you guys. Literally, we had clients say that before. I'm not interested in talking about that. Like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And it's interesting because there's a reality that all of us as entrepreneurs have this sense of overwhelm. And at the same time, I think, as Reid Hoffman widely pointed out one time, as an entrepreneur, you have to be capable of knowing that part of the house is on fire, and at the same time laying your head down and going to sleep and being like, I'm going to go to sleep now for 8 hours, even though I know that there's things in my business that are broken. But then you have to wake up and be able to manage through those things. And sometimes, unfortunately, we encounter entrepreneurs who are like, no, I'm just not going to go there anymore. I'm not going to talk about Facebook ads because I tried it 4 times and it never worked, I'm happy with my email. And that can really be a bummer because as an outside observer, it totally limits our ability to speak into the obvious errors that we see, the obvious situations that are, not going well, that we can see as outside observers. And there's a lot that goes into this. There's like sort of a set of subtopics around this whole idea. So what are your thoughts on clients that have sort of a gated or guarded mindset around some activities?
It's interesting because, you get clients that come to you, they recognize there's something in their business that they want to change, they don't understand, they want to grow in. And yet, you bring all of your prior baggage around that business, especially if you've been in it for a while, like to the table. And so, to your point, there are some mindsets that lean into it. And one of them being a perfectionist, right? Like you have to be okay with, getting it done V1, minimally viable, it's out the door. And obviously if you have an aesthetic for brand and you're really hyper focused on your branding, then obviously it needs to look that level. But will it perform perfectly out of the gate? Does it have to be pristine? Probably not, right? Like it just needs to test your thesis whether or not that this is a good idea and it actually adds incremental value to your business in any way. And it's really the people that are non-perfectionists but are very good at being iterative quickly are the ones that really see long-term success because they can fail their way to where they need to get much faster. And I think that's an important thing to think through when it comes to that.
Yeah, another one that comes to my mind in this regard is sort of just a low trust relationship with your new coach. If you come into the relationship and you're like, oh, I don't really trust you to speak into my whatever it is, like my welcome sequence, or something like that. Like I set this up with someone and I'm totally comfortable with it. Like, I don't trust you guys, and in some ways this makes sense because you don't want to let people meddle in your business. But at the same time, if you hire a coach, you've got to figure out, do they have expertise in an area and can it, in essence, level up my game in these various regards. And every coach has strengths and weaknesses, and some coaches have areas that they're stronger in, and others have areas that they have gaps in. And so coming into the relationship, though, with low trust across the board is a recipe for frustration, I think, because you won't lean into what the coach is telling you. And I always liken this stuff to like a basketball coach or a football coach. It's like you come into a relationship, if you said to your basketball coach, I don't really think you know what you're talking about how to dribble or, what play to run. So I'm sure I'm going to do that. The coach would be like, get out of here, like you're benched. And so that relationship of trust is really vital. And there are other mindsets that come to my mind as well. People who can come into a relationship who really have been sort of traumatized by their past failures or past, activities, and that can come into it with a victim mindset. And they're just afraid to do anything. They're afraid to move forward and confused because they feel like they've been, they've had either partners in the past or employees in the past or coaches in the past that have really, really fouled them up. And so they're very, very, kind of victim mindset in their approach. What else? What are the other ideas related to this?
I was just going to say there's only a few players who can probably tell the coach that's not the play I'm going to run. One of them being LeBron. But there's a pretty strong there's a pretty strong chance that you are not the LeBron of your game. So until you are LeBron level eliteness, you probably need to take as much input as you possibly can to keep on refining and get to where you want to go. So part of being coachable is just recognizing when somebody calls out your own gaps, how do you respond? And so I think that helps to deal with that low trust mindset. It's just to realize if I'm bringing this coach, this service provider, and we're agreed these are the goals, they're going to speak into it. I'm going to do whatever I can to try and trust them to do their jobs, and then give them what they need to succeed. That will help you be much more effective.
I've also observed a different mindset, which is related to this, which is sometimes a client will want to talk about parts of their business that they're comfortable in and know a certain amount about, but the areas of their business that they're least comfortable in and have the biggest gaps, it's almost like they're ashamed or embarrassed to talk about, and they're not comfortable. So they don't want to be pushed into those spaces where it's like, hey, let's talk about this, whatever it might be, because they're like, no, I'm not ready for that. Or, you can tell there's resistance because they are unclear. And right. I'm always reminded of the quote that says, a confused mind says no or goes slow. And you can see that in the coaching relationship where it's like, oh, they're confused about this real bad, so they don't even want to talk about it.
Right.
It's not like they want you to sort it out with them or for them. They're just not ready to go there, because they feel like they're too unprepared for that. So that's kind of an interesting situation people can get to. Yeah, what else?
For sure. Yeah, another one that we've seen before too is you just have a victim mindset. So everything is, all your problems are external. Everything that's happening to you, whether it's competitors, whether it's people stealing your product ideas, like driving up your ad, whatever it is, it's always Facebook's fault, it's Google's fault. And it's the abdication of responsibility and what you can do and what you can control. And that's problematic, because that really just puts you in this negative feedback loop where you're just looking for opportunities to blame something outside of your control, when in reality, the only thing you can control in your business is what you can control. Like, you can't dictate the market. You have to respond to it and adapt and find your levels of efficiency and what you bring to the game. And getting out of that is not that necessarily easy, but hopefully your coaches and the people in your business and your life can help call you out on it if that's becoming a pattern for you.
Yeah, I totally agree. Okay, we got to get cranking here on these, so we're going to rattle through them quickly. Another mindset is the know-it-all mindset. The idea that the client comes into the relationship, but when you talk about a certain topic, whether you are an expert on it or not, they know better. And it's a situation where they're like, no, I'm not, I've got my thing on lockdown for that. I'm not gonna change. I know better. And so that can be a hard mindset as well. Let's keep going, because we got 5 more to punch through here. So what else is top of mind? Yeah.
Let's hit the next one. The other mindset that is is frustrating that clients sort of bring to the table, how to be a better client, is you have your comfort zone mindset. And that's when you sort of got used to a certain lane and you're not willing to expand or look into other directions to kind of break you out of that lane. So you're just doing what you've always been doing, and you're comfortable with it, and you're unnecessary to take the next steps to really grow. And that is, seen that a few times with clients in the past. It's easy to get into, again, especially if you've been in business for a while, right? And you have some track record and history. You obviously got to where you're at with your business success so far. But often what got you to where you're at will not get you to where you want to be, right? And that is where pushing and being comfortable in pushing beyond your comfort limits really becomes imperative for growth.
Yeah, totally right. So the next one is a short-term thinking mindset. And this one can be really frustrating too. And the reality is that many people are just completely and totally fixated on the next few days ahead, next few weeks ahead. And sometimes it can be a real stretch to have people think about a quarter ahead, or a year ahead, or to think about the whole year in totality. And that can be a mindset that really, really is difficult for people. It's a challenge, especially as it relates to financial planning and financial engineering inside a business, and thinking about where you need to be, in the medium to long term. And so often, clients can sometimes be in firefighter mode, where they're just putting out fire after fire, and they can't, take the time to think in the medium and the long term, and that can be real frustrations. What else?
Yeah, let's keep going. A comparison mindset is another one, where you're constantly measuring your progress against someone else. Maybe it's a competitor, maybe it's someone else, and you're always sort of feeling inadequate. Rather than focusing on growth, you're just kind of looking what the other person's doing. Now, you definitely need to be paying attention to what your competitors are doing, but you also have to be realistic in terms of where you are, as in terms of size and scope and history when you compare yourself to competitors. If you're new to a space, obviously they have a big lead on sort of brand awareness and where, how much market share they have. But if you are only be like, well, I just see them and it's like so frustrating because they're so good at what they're doing, you have to find and get super clear on your unique selling proposition in your marketplace and really embrace that mindset and not be comparative in what you're doing. Or even if you're not looking at competitors, maybe you have other friends as an entrepreneur in e-commerce, whatever you're doing, and you're just kind of looking what they do and you see what they're doing. The challenge with that mindset is that you only see really the tip of the iceberg, right? You only see that maybe the potential success that they're having right now. What you don't see is all of the grind and all of the failure and all of the work that they put in that is not visible, right? And so you don't know how long that their so-called success story is taken to get where they want to go. So being mindful of comparing yourself to others, it's important. You want to use benchmarks in your business for sure, but definitely be mindful of that.
Yeah, totally right. Another mindset that we run into sometimes is the scarcity mindset. And in the scarcity mindset, whatever the new idea is, it takes too much money and it takes too much time and it takes too much staff. And so it's like, nope, I can't do it. I wish I could, but I can't. And that's a really, really challenging mindset as well. You just don't believe you have the resources or the agency within your business to take the next logical steps. That can be a tough one to overcome. So
Sure.
A couple more. Yep.
Yeah, overwhelm. We mentioned this a little bit earlier in the show, but it is definitely a mindset and a challenge, particularly in the heavy media consumption, social media, quick firing landscape of information that we live in today. It's easy to get sucked into the next silver bullet, the thing you should be doing because everybody's saying that this is the thing to do. And you just get literally overwhelmed by the task, the nuance, the responsibility, and you end up procrastinating and getting, paralyzed with indecision. And so that's where getting a coach can be helpful to help in sort of looking through the 30,000 foot level of what's important in your business and help you come up with a plan of action to take and really focus on that stuff. Because without it, you kind of just get stuck in the mud. Yeah,
totally right. And the final mindset that we run into is just a confused mind, unclear on numbers, unclear on strategies, unclear on tactics, unclear on the basic concepts related to the business. And this one is, again, to your point, like with Overwhelm, it's sort of a reason to get a coach. And this can be sorted out. And ideally, a good coach, and ideally we, as we're coaching people, will help them get clearer and clearer on the various aspects of their business. That's our goal, obviously. And so having that mindset, at the beginning of the relationship is not a bad thing at all. And ideally, over time, people will grow in their confidence and in their understanding of the specific, profit and loss statement and financial statements, their strategies and tactics on various platforms and tools, and they get better and better at understanding how to manage their business. Okay, so this has been a list of 10 mindsets that can really be a challenge to clients. And we say all of these things in love. We hopefully are speaking the truth in love. Maybe we should do a podcast in the near future about all the ways we failed our clients.
Oh, that would be a very long podcast.
A wonderful long list as well.
A 4-part series.
And the truth of it is, no one's perfect. But hopefully this gives you some insight into how to approach your Shopify business and how to approach working with vendors and partners who can help you get better and get your business to the next level. So I'm going to wrap it there. If you've appreciated this podcast, we hope you just keep checking them out. Give us a like, love, comment, or review on the player of choice that you use. Feel free to share this with your Shopify friends and let them know about the E-commerce Leader podcast. And of course, you can find out more about how to work with us at OmniRocket.com. We're happy to jump on a 30-minute call, talk about your Shopify site, your goals and your needs, and brainstorm with you a better future. So, Kyle, thanks, man. As always, it's been an honor.
It's been fun. Look forward to chatting with you guys. Hit up this website and book your 30-minute call.
There you go. See you, everybody.